Welcome to Fully Booked, the Bookish podcast where I'll chat about all things book and reading related. Whether you're new or a pro reader, there's something for everyone to learn. I'm here to help you on your reading journey and find that next great read that will keep you fully booked. Hello, readers, and welcome to episode 40 of Fully Booked. I'm your host, Natalie, and today's episode is going to be more of a chill, fun one where I'll be playing This or That Bookish Edition and choosing all my favorite bookish things. Now, I'll be honest, this idea would probably be a lot more fun if I had a co-host to play with rather than me talking and no one is here to answer right now. But I still really wanted to do this episode, so we're just going to go with it. So definitely feel free to play along with me at home and comment below your answers. Also, on a slightly related note, I have been thinking of setting up another online community of sorts for those of you who might only be listening on audio, but still want to engage more with the podcast and also be able to answer my questions that I sometimes leave for you guys in certain episodes. I know I do leave all my socials for you all to send DMs, which FYI, that is always going to be an option, but sometimes there's a bit of a disconnect for audio listeners, as I do realize some people still prefer to listen only versus watching podcasts, which I totally get, but I want to start building more of a community with my listeners, and in particular, I really want to start an online book club with all of you. I thought at first about using Patreon since it has so many built-in engagement features, and I do know other creators who use Patreon for their book clubs. However, I do want the book club to be a free option. Some of you probably saw that I posted on my Instagram story a few weeks ago asking if people wanted to do buddy reads on the pod, and honestly, I didn't get enough responses to warrant taking further action to start doing that. However, I'm thinking maybe people were a bit confused on what I meant by buddy reads. I'm not really sure. And to clarify now, I meant having an online book club for the pod. So, if you are still interested in being a part of a book club for this pod, leave a comment or, again, DM me via any of my socials. I'm teetering between Fable or Discord right now in terms of platform options, depending on what people would prefer. Or if you have another option, then feel free to let me know as well. Okay, anyways, that was all unrelated to today's episode, but I just wanted to put the idea out there again as I love having this podcast, but sometimes it does feel like I'm putting content out into a void, or at least at the time when I'm sitting here recording these episodes, so having some more community and engagement would be very nice, and I hope you'll all enjoy it as well. But with that being said, let's actually get into the this or that for today. Alright, so I have compiled a list, and honestly, I'm just going to try to go through as many as I can today. So let's start off with one book versus multiple books. And I'm making an assumption that this means reading one book at a time versus reading multiple books at the same time. And if you guys have been around for long enough, you're probably already going to know my answer. Always reading multiple books at a time. And I feel like I get the question a lot from even like friends and family that I know of how do I even read multiple books at a time? Because most of the people that I know only read one book at a time, and this seems unfathomable. And honestly, my answer is simply to read all kinds of different genres. Like if you guys follow me on like Goodreads or Fable as well, and you actually kind of track in real time what I'm reading, then you'll see that I'm always reading completely different things, whether it's romance, sometimes fantasy or dystopian. I usually have at least some sort of nonfiction book on the go. I also tend to have multiple books because some books, for example, I'm reading on my Kindle, some of them I'm reading as hybrid, and then others I'll read only on audio. So I don't know if that completely answered that question, but yeah, that's just kind of how I read multiple books at a time. Okay, next one, hardback versus paperbacks. Now, I'm literally looking at my physical TBR as I'm recording this, and maybe almost 90% of my books are paperback, so definitely paperback. I feel like hardbacks are just kind of inflexible, literally, because there's the issue of not being able to crack or bend the spine. And then if they come with the dust jacket, whether you take it off or leave it on when you read. I just feel like paperbacks are so much more flexible. Again, literally, the only problem that I have with paperbacks is one, that are really long books and tend to get a little bit too floppy after a bit of time, and then they're just too bendy when you're trying to hold and read them. But otherwise, if it's your standard 200 to 300 page paperback book, definitely my preferred. Okay, so this next one's on a pretty related note, and that is physical books versus ebooks. You guys should know my answer. For me, it's ebooks. I am still totally in my Kindle era. If you guys couldn't tell from the lack of physical books that I own. Which, by the way, if you haven't listened to or watched episode 34 yet, you should definitely go back and watch that one, because that is where I went through every single book on my physical TBR. So this next one is interesting, and that is audiobooks versus book playlists. Now, if you had asked me this one 2 years ago, I would have said book playlists. I love listening to music while reading, so of course playlists are the best. The only thing is that at least curated book playlists are really more of a thing for romance and some fantasy books, and you really don't get them with other genres if you want to have something to listen to with any of your books. The only notable one I do want to mention here is that I love the Magnolia Parks and Daisy Hates book playlists that people have created on Spotify. Of course, people create all kinds of playlists for all kinds of books, but those ones in particular, if you are going to read that series, definitely listen to the playlist that people curate, because they are so good. Like, I'm talking expert level good in relation to the content that is in those books. But anyways, in general, you guys already know, again, I am in an audiobook era as well right now. I love listening, especially because I commute a lot by car nowadays, and obviously I can't read my physical book or ebook when I'm driving. So for me right now, audiobooks for the win. Okay, next one POV versus 2+ POVs. Now, I know multiple POVs is getting popular in certain genres, what with dual POV in romance books popping up, and then family-related dramas, or some sort of books where there's a whole cast of characters and you're getting these multiple POVs. And certain books, I will say, if it's written and done well, I do enjoy them still. But in general, I tend to find multiple POVs, for me at least, just gets a little bit too confusing in terms of the storytelling. And sometimes I'm just a very simple person nowadays in terms of what I'm reading. And so one POV is fine with me. So this next one is going to be a bit of an unpopular opinion, at least I think, and that is first person versus third person narrative. And I said unpopular because I would say, looking at the online book community, or maybe I should say at least female book content creators, most people seem to prefer first person narrative. A lot of people just like that more subjective, immersive, personal narration style, but I am one of the odd people that I actually prefer third person. Or I don't know if I should say prefer, but I actually really enjoy third person. And I think it's because I've read a bunch of authors, I guess mostly like lit fic or general fiction authors in the last few months that just know how to write in third person. And I don't know if any of this is going to make sense to people listening right now, but I feel like the way I think about it, sometimes there's just different perspective and clarity that you get on a storyline when you're reading more as an outsider looking in on this world and these characters versus when you're reading from a more immersive lens, if that makes any sense at all. I also just think that certain scenes, descriptions, and setups in books can be done more beautifully and lyrically when it's written in third person versus first person. And maybe that's just personal bias and experience coming out a bit here, but yeah, that's honestly just my way of thinking when it comes to these different narration styles. So I'm looking at the next two on this list, and again, I think I'm going to have some unpopular opinions, and this next one is fantasy versus contemporary. And for this one, I have to say contemporary, which I know probably hurts some people's hearts. listening to that who are fantasy readers, but I don't know what it is about fantasy in that the older I get, the less I am into fantasy, which is weird because I really did used to love fantasy when I was a kid and in my early teens. And it's sad because this year I did try to put some fantasy books in my TBRs, and I said 2025 is going to be the year of fantasy. And we're almost halfway through the year now, and that just has not been happening. And yeah, I don't know why I just can't get into fantasy as much as I used to. And I guess it's kind of upsetting because looking at the majority of people who have joined the online book community over the past couple years, everyone seems to really be into fantasy and it is their top genre to read. And I, unfortunately, just can't really get with it. Okay, so I'm almost 100% certain that you guys already know what I'm going to say for this one. Friends to lovers versus enemies to lovers. And honestly, I don't think I even need to explain my answer because I've gone over this dozens of times at some point on the podcast. Friends to lovers, always. Alright, so the next one on this list is morning reading versus nighttime reading. Now, I technically do both. But I will say, especially I've been noticing lately, when I have busier days, sometimes by the time I get to the end of the day, I'm so tired that I really don't feel like reading, and I honestly just end up watching YouTube or a little bit of TV before I go to bed. So, if I want to make sure that I get even a little bit of reading time in every single day, for me, morning reading is it. So, moving along to a book adjacent activity or habit, I guess you would call it, and that is tea versus coffee. And I know this one's going to be cheating, but for this one, I have to say both. And I can literally attest to that because I have 2 mugs sitting in front of me on my desk right now, both of which are empty because I drank from them earlier this morning. So I'm sorry, but for this one, you can't make me choose. Hey readers, I hope you're enjoying the episode so far, and hear me out before you hit skip. I'm so grateful for all my listeners who are with me on this reading journey, and I'd like to ask that if you haven't yet, please leave a rating and review as it helps others find the podcast. Also, please consider supporting the podcast financially as it helps me bring you more exciting content, and you'll get some extras like bonus and subscriber-only episodes, early access to new episodes, and much more. The link to donate will be in the show notes below, or you can go to buymeacoffee.com/fullybookedpod. Thank you so much again for choosing to listen to Fully Booked, and now back to the episode. Ooh, so this next one is a bit of a hard one for me at least, and that is fiction versus nonfiction. Now, if you guys are following me on my Instagram, which if you're not, you should go do that, you would have seen that I put one nonfiction pick in my May and June hopefuls. That is because I'm trying to do the 75 soft challenge, also on my own time. And I have to say, while nonfiction is a different type of enjoyment from reading fiction, where when I read fiction, it's more for pure fun and entertainment, nonfiction is still not at all bad and enjoyable. And I do really enjoy getting to learn and develop myself more on that personal level. But looking at my reading insights and seeing that all my top genres are still fiction, I would still have to say fiction for this one. There's just something about the escapism element that always keeps pulling me back to fiction. Okay, next one on this list is library versus bookstore. So, if my lack of physical TBR didn't make this clear already, the library is my number one spot nowadays. Now, I have to say, the majority of my books were coming online from Libby over the past couple months, but as of very recently, I've actually been placing holds for physical books at my local library, and it's actually been going pretty well, and it's been a nice way to pick up some books as a physical copy, since again, I can't really afford to buy every single book that I want as a physical copy right now. Although, I will say, there are a couple issues with placing holds for physical books, because I don't know how other library systems do this, but for my local library within the GTA, when you place a hold for a physical book, if the book is available at a different branch than like your designated pickup one. It can come from any of the branches that are in the GTA. So it could be coming from a location that's like half an hour or an hour away, which for those of you who do not live in the GTA and don't know how big it is, it's bigger than you think. So I feel like waiting for holds, for physical holds can take a bit longer, and it's also a little bit more arbitrary of how long you're going to have to wait. The one thing I do like about Libby is that you do get a pretty approximate wait time. Like it'll tell you how many weeks that it's going to take for the book to get to you, which is also good because it gives you more time to cancel or suspend holds if you need to. That's just a bit trickier to do if you're placing physical holds. And I did have 2 holds that I forgot to pick up last year because I just forgot to check, and I ended up having to pay $2, which is not bad, but still. But I will say, for going to actually pick up physical books from the library is so easy because my designated branch, I literally live across the street from it. Like I'm talking, I live less than a 5-minute walk away and I'm there. So I have to say that has been pretty nice. All right, next up we have reading with music versus reading in silence. Now, this is another one that if you'd asked me 2 years ago, I would have said I always read with music. Who even reads in silence? But as I was saying earlier, since the majority of my reading is done in the morning, I feel like I'm starting to prefer silence. And I forget if I've mentioned this a lot on the podcast, but I'm a pretty early riser. And I'm talking like I'm up by 5 or 6 in the morning every morning. I find when I'm reading very early in the morning, even having music on in the background is a little too noisy first thing for my ears, and reading in silence just suits me a lot better. And I actually find that I even focus a bit better now in the book, depending on what the genre is that I'm reading. Okay, so I feel like this next one, you're either on one side or the other, and there's no in between. And that is bookmarks versus dog earing. Now, if you guys remember from my unpopular opinions episode, which by the way, you should go back and listen to that one as well. I did specifically say in that one that I am one of those annoying people who will only use a bookmark. I am not a dog-earing person when it comes to my books. But one positive thing I do want to say about using bookmarks is that it kind of becomes its own hobby adjacent to actually reading books. And funny story thinking back, when I was a kid, I used to love collecting bookmarks from every place that I'd been to. So I'm sure you guys know how some people collect like magnets or postcards when they travel somewhere, but for me, it was always bookmarks. And I'm pretty sure I had like around 100 bookmarks at some point or something crazy like that, because literally every single place I would go, whether it's like a museum or some national historic site, anything, I would be getting a bookmark when I was there. Okay, next one, over versus under 500 pages. Now this one is pretty easy for me. I'm still pretty much a person who reads books under 500 pages. I feel like on average the books that I pick up are around 300 to 400 pages. Although I will say, compared to last year, I feel like I have read more books that were over 500 pages. And one note I want to make is that I feel like if you read more fantasy books, you're automatically reading books that are at least 500 pages, as it's pretty hard to find fantasy books that are on the thinner side, unless you're reading middle grade fantasy. But even then, I've checked, and Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix, that book is almost 900 pages. I guess that series is a little bit different because it does go from middle grade to young adult, but still. Alright guys, we are making our way down this list. We are on the second last one, which is standalone versus series. Yet another one that popped up in my unpopular opinions episode, but to jog your memory, if you do not remember what I said then, standalones are still my jam in 2025. I just honestly like the resolution, the cleaner ending that you get with a standalone versus going through each book in a series and being left on cliffhangers and having to wait for the next book to come out. I just cannot commit. Especially because so many series that are being released nowadays are at least 5 or 6 books. If there were more series that were like back in the day where we mostly get trilogies, I would be okay with starting a lot more series, but I just cannot commit. So if you guys have any good series recommendations for me, if you can convince me to read it, then feel free to comment below or send me a DM because I definitely would love some series recommendations. So the last one we have for today's episode is Beach versus Cozy Winter Read. Now this one might be a little bit surprising because you guys have probably gotten the sense that I usually enjoy the colder weather seasons better and all the coziness and getting to stay inside and whatnot. But surprisingly, I'm actually a huge beach reader. And when I get the opportunity, I really enjoy reading on the beach. I find it very relaxing for some reason, which of course it is. But yeah, I prefer it slightly over winter reading. I think I probably just like outdoor reading a lot in general once the weather gets warm enough. And it's interesting because I don't get the opportunity to read on the beach a lot. We do have, quote, beaches here in Ontario, but it's not like the beaches in other areas of the world where you actually live next to the ocean. And they're just not as nice as when I go to a beach on vacation. And so the last time I really read on the beach was the cruise that I took last November. So it really feels like it's been a while. Obviously, it also hasn't been warm enough to read outside in general the past few months. So yeah, even though I don't really get to beach read a lot, hopefully I at least get to read outside. And that is it for today's This or That Bookish edition. Hope you guys enjoyed listening and playing along today. And don't forget to drop some of your answers in the comments either on YouTube or on Instagram. If you guys hadn't noticed, I do weekly posts on Instagram every time I drop a new episode, which is every Tuesday. So again, lots of ways to engage with the podcast. But another reminder before we leave that if you aren't already, to go and subscribe on YouTube. I know that not all of my episodes I've been posting are video, but the easiest way to get notified when I do post those video episodes is to go and subscribe, and it's free. So make sure to go do that before you forget. But as always, I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I will see you back here for episode 41. Thank you for listening to today's episode. I hope you were able to take away something, and be sure to follow the podcast for more bookish content. Until next time, stay fully booked, and I'll talk to you soon.